here again. We're here for another IK house party this Friday. We've got Hotel Garuda here, aka Asim. Everybody say hi and welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
So he is an electronic producer, remixer, artist, basically everything to do with electronic music and instrumentation and all that good stuff. So we're going to talk about that. But let's start off with how you're doing. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just like everyone else in lockdown, trying to stay productive, trying to stay healthy and mobile. Yeah, it's been like such a weird change of pace, going from like touring every week to not touring at all. So yeah, it's taken some getting used to, but I think it's a learning process for everyone. It's a learning experience.
For sure. So I see you're probably not actually at the beach, right?
No, I'm not at the beach, but my room is not the cleanest room in the world, so I didn't want to offend the viewers by showing them my room. I'd rather show them this idyllic beach that I am on.
I see. So how have you been doing in quarantine without touring? Have you been more creative or?
Honestly, back and forth. Like, I think towards the start of quarantine, I was like way more productive, but as the time has gone on, it's been a little bit difficult to like make time to make music because like a lot of times, the connection I have with like making music is stronger when I have a reason to make it, in the sense that like a lot of times I make music because I think I want to play it live, right? And that's like an important connection between making music and playing it for me. And right now, when there's just no shows in the near future, it's a little hard to feel motivated to make music, to make new stuff. Making stuff is cool anyway. Like I just make, random ideas and like little loops and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like it was probably like a bit of a cliche at the start of quarantine to be like, all right, everyone's in lockdown, everyone make 10 albums now. But I feel like the reality is more like, why should I make music? Like, I need to find a reason to make music. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you just released your EP, The Tension, a few weeks ago. Was any of that done in quarantine?
It was like finished off, like the last like maybe 5-6% of it was finished in quarantine, but I actually started it about a year ago when I went back home to India to get my artist visa for the US. And because I was going from like I live in LA, so like all of my stuff is here, like my my speakers, my guitars, my synths and all that. And because I was going back to India for like a couple of months, I had to figure out like what I was going to bring with me. So I just brought like my laptop and my audio interface.
Wow.
So I like really forced myself to go all in the box for at least like the first batch of like rough demos. Yeah, so I started it like a year ago, and of the initial first batch that I made, I think two of them are on the EP. The other two were made when I got back, which was like September, October last year. Yeah, like the EP like took a really long time because I feel like I was still in the middle of like a bit of a decision making process, like just figuring out how I wanted it to sound. And I kind of went back and forth a bunch, but I think I settled on something that I really like eventually.
Nice. So where did like your inspiration or like your idea for the EP as a whole come from?
So I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I feel like interpersonal relationships and like interpersonal tension is like kind of interpersonal and intrapersonal tension is like the kind of overarching theme of the whole project. I feel like the first like 4 or 5 years of my career, or the first 4 years of my career, I was like very into, or like very much a part of like a house music scene and like club music, and it was a great time, and I got to play a lot of really cool festivals and clubs, and make a lot of really fun dance music, but I felt like it didn't like resonate with me the way it did in like 2015, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think I just wanted to like really try to be true to my early influences and like the stuff I listened to growing up.
Which was what?
So a lot of the stuff I listened to growing up was like the stuff that my dad put me onto, like the Alan Parsons Project. It's like my favorite band probably. It's like dad rock from the 70s. And I grew up playing guitar, and I grew up playing guitar in bands and like singing in bands and stuff. So I like the sort of like performative nature of it. Like it sounds like I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a Guitar Hero moments. Like there's like specific energy to it that feels very like stage like it's like a band on stage is like one of the energy that I wanted to capture. Yeah, and like the more recently the stuff I've been listening to is like Tame Impala and Unknown Mortal Orchestra and Pond and JSOM and things like that. And I wanted to explore that a bit more because I felt like everyone who followed me on like social media or like who were already listeners of mine were probably like expecting just 4 house tracks, and I was like, nope, sorry. Just
well, that's
kidding.
a good thing. That's part of being an artist, is always changing and evolving.
Yeah.
Cool. So what was your most challenging song on the EP to complete? Like, which one gave you the most problems?
That's a really good question. I think the last one, Leave You, because it's a really short song, and it's like it's probably like the simplest song out of all of them. And like despite how simple it is, it was like really challenging to mix how I wanted to mix it. And I wrote the song with my friend Chaz Madoka, and he also like co-produced it. And because we were finishing it in quarantine, like we were listening to it on just headphones and like, you know, bedroom studio environments, and like you get like demo-itis and you don't really know if things sound the way they sound.
Oh yeah.
And because all 3 of the other songs were done already, like by like March or April, I think. And Leave You, I think I took like another like 2 months to finish it, or like a month and a half, just because I felt like I was so demo-itis out. Like I didn't know what I was listening to. Like I would listen to it all the time and like try to work on it, but I don't know. It took a lot of like really long sessions with my mix engineer to like really nail it in. And you know, sometimes, I mean, there are a lot of people that do everything by themselves. Like they produce, they record, they mix, they write and sing and everything. But like, there's no shame in hiring someone else to help you mix and master. Like, I have a great relationship with my mix engineer, Evan Sutton, out of New York. And once it got to a point where the song felt like it was done, but I just couldn't do what I wanted to do with the mix, I just sent it to him and I was like, hey, can you make it sound like this, but also like this? And gave him a bunch of reference points. And really it was the mix engineer who brought it to like the finish line at the end.
So what advice would you give to artists that are experiencing demo-itis? Like how would you tell them to get past it?
I think the most important thing is to not like force yourself to work on it, because if you force yourself to work on it, you're gonna run into more of a wall. Like the wall gets harder to break through the more you try to break through it at some point. Like there's something to be said for just showing up every day and like trying to do it and like trying to work on it. I respect that too, but sometimes you just need to stop listening to it for like a week or like a few days or you know, 2 weeks or a month or something. I don't know. Sometimes it takes a long time for your ears to reset and like for your brain and for what you expect from the song and what comes out of the song to like line up. Often takes a lot more time than you might expect.
Definitely. And getting another set of ears on it definitely helps as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Fortunately I live with like 3 other producers, and you know, they heard my whole EP probably like 200 times before it got released. I was just like, frantically like, guys, what do you think of this part of the mix? What do you think of this part of the mix? Like, they're like, it's fine, everything sounds cool. Like, why are you stressing about it?
I feel like that's how it always goes. You show people like you're so focused in on the small details, and they're just like, yeah, it sounds fine.
Yeah, and I'm like, but did you pay attention to this guitar part in this part of the song? And I'm like, 99% of people won't even like notice if the EQ is like a little off or something like that. But
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show you that like the closer you are to the project, it's like the harder it is to see it objectively, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that I struggled with until I came back to LA after I was like in India by myself. Like I was living with my brother in India, and it was literally just the two of us together for like 3 months. And he works at a law firm there, and so I was just like all day I just make music, and when he comes home we'd hang out, have dinner and stuff. But like he's not he's not a musician, but he like plays guitar casually, so like I would bounce stuff off him. And I think that for professional creatives, showing your work to non-creatives is a really, really good way to get a sense of where it's at. Because a lot of times like creatives will like nitpick and like judge specific things that may not necessarily need judging. Like a lot of times, like if you show your, like that's why a lot of times when I finish songs, I show them to my parents first before I show them to like anyone else, because both my parents love music, but they don't know the first thing about music making or like music production. So like
Okay.
it's a nice way to get like a first set of ears on something, a first impression.
Uh-huh. Okay, so do you have any music coming out soon that you'd like to mention?
Honestly, no. I've just been kind of taking a creative break and trying to figure out where I want the project to go from here. Um, I think after like pouring myself into the EP, I needed to like take a step back a little bit and see what I wanted the project to develop into, or like what I wanted Garuda to develop into. And um, I'm trying to figure that out. I think that now is such a pivotal moment for a lot of musicians, a lot of artists specifically, like people who aren't in the top like 10% of earners in music are really being forced to like reckon with themselves. And while it is stressful, I think it's really important that everyone goes through something like this every now and then to like really reevaluate what you want out of music. And I find that the more time that passes that I don't make new things, the more I need to make new things to be happy. Like it's like you prioritize different things, right? Like when you're not generating income from your main source of income, like my main source of income is touring. So like now that it's gone, I had to like focus on alternative income revenue streams. So like trying to figure out how to make more merch, and just trying to figure out how to make money on the side. And music kind of took a little bit of a back seat to that, but I feel like mentally there was like a shift as soon as that happened, and I feel the itch to go back to making music more and more every day.
Yeah, and that it's like a healthy break. Like you take a break from something
Mm-hmm.
and you wanna do it 10 times more when you come back. So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's good.
100%.
So let's take it back a little bit. So to get to where you are now, you've had like many years of experience in the music industry. Um, and I know you've done official remixes for like Lorde and Lana Del Ray and stuff. So like,
Mm-hmm.
how did these opportunities come to you, and what was it like working with these artists?
So, okay, there's like a little bit of misconception when you do remixes that people think that you're working with the artist. Obviously, like it's kind of like their manager or their label or whatever being like, hey, do you want to remix our song? We'll either pay you this much amount of money, or we're not going to pay you at all until you do it, and then we'll decide if we're going to pay you or not. And uh, in the I feel like in the height of my remix days, I was still in a duo with Manila Killa, who lives next door. He's in the room next door, and because we started in the remix world and uh, got a lot of traction really quickly, um, I think that we became known as like a group that would be suitable to remixing pop artists, which is a really desirable place to be in. So once we did we did like unofficial remixes first. We did like a bootleg. The first release we ever did was a bootleg remix. The second one we ever did was like another bootleg that the record label tried to make official, but they couldn't clear the sample, so it ended up staying a bootleg. The third one we did was a bootleg remix of Lana Del Ray, which I think her management team heard, and they contacted us to do an official remix off her album that came out immediately following that. This was like summer 2015, I think, or 2016, like whenever her album Ultraviolence came out. And it's funny that like when you're like a new and up and coming artist and you have a few songs that get like a few million plays or whatever, you tend to feel like you're in the running with everyone else that also gets the same numbers, or that also like does the same kinds of remixes and stuff, that gets the same opportunities. But a lot of times there's these artists like we were at that time, we don't have any leverage. So like a lot of times when a major label artist will come at us to ask for a remix, they're asking for a remix with no fee attached, or they're not going to pay us for all the work that we put into it until they decide that it's up to scratch. And I think the music industry is a little flawed in that regard. Like the leverage is so stacked in favor of the record labels, and there's still I can't really mention names, but there's a remix that we did that has a ridiculous number of plays that I have yet to see any money from, because when we did the remix at the time, we did it like it was kind of like a quid pro quo transaction where like we get to do this remix, like we're getting done a favor to be allowed to do this remix for this person, and it ended up being like the biggest remix of that artist. That
if you could go back in time, would you still do it?
Yeah, probably, because like the shows and the touring that we got based off of that, like I think made up for it. But in hindsight, like after 4 years later, or 5, 4 years later, when let me think about how to phrase this. Like when the song is not as fresh in people's memory, that song is not the reason they're buying tickets to see you live. You know what I mean? Like the old paradigm of going on tour to convince people to buy your music, it's like now it's flipped. It's like now you make music to convince people to see you on tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to constantly think about how your product is, like what your product is and why it's desirable, right? So in hindsight, I would have still done it, the remix for no money or whatever, but I would have probably stipulated that we get a split on the royalties, because years down the line, when people have forgotten about when people who were seeing us live in those days are not maybe as into the music now, which is totally fine. Like people grow out and grow into artists, and it goes in waves. Like I listen to artists now that I haven't listened to for 5 years that I used to listen to a lot. There's like it's like waves, like anything, right? So like if some kid who used to listen to that song a bunch and came to see us on tour because of that song, like if they don't listen to my music anymore, then they're not buying tickets to see me live. But if they're still listening to that one song, even if they aren't coming to see me live, it's like a little bit unfair for us not to get any of the proceeds from that song. Does that make sense? Like I might be
definitely.
rambling a little bit,
I mean those revenue is still like raking up probably, because once you get a certain amount of plays, it kind of just multiplies when you hit that really high threshold.
Exactly. So, yeah. So like if I were to give any advice to up and coming artists, is like,
oh, that was my next question.
Amazing, perfect timing. So I mean, it's really popular for people to say don't do anything for exposure. Like exposure is not currency, which is true. Like it's undoubtedly true. And especially now where everyone's short money, people are trying to pay bills, people are trying to like survive, and at the corporate level, record labels are doing fine. They're doing just fine. If anything, they're making more money than ever, because people have more time than ever to be at their phones or at their computers. listening to music. So I understand that it's difficult for, undiscovered or under publicized artists to command fees, but I think at the very minimum, artists should ask for a split on the publishing or on the royalties. That's like that should be just like
mandatory.
That should be mandatory. Yeah, 100%. That should be completely mandatory. And
For sure.
it's honestly like good faith to do that. Like I take it as offense. Like maybe this is my ego talking for sure. This is definitely like me being a little full of myself. But still, like when an artist you look up to, especially like when it's somebody who you listen to a lot, or like somebody you hold in high regard, if they reach out to you for a remix and then they say, actually, we're not going to pay you until we hear what you've done, because they want to do it on spec, right, on speculation. And like it's such a nightmare, like when you put like 60 hours, like you put an entire week, or like they say you have a deadline to meet, like we need this remix in like 2 weeks, or like we need it in a week. And because you like that artist so much and you like that song so much, you'll pour every minute of every hour of every day like into that remix for a week or 2 weeks straight, just to try to get to a point where they'll listen to it and then decide if they want to pay you or not. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that like you can put in 60 hours of work or 100 hours of work and not get paid anything for your time, for your effort, So it's like, it's kind of soul crushing that kind of deal still exists. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, because if you don't take it, the next person will. So that's kind of how it stays alive. But
exactly.
What advice would you give to someone kind of looking for opportunities of this sort? Like, what would you tell them to do to either like reach out or get reached out to?
That's tough. I think like if you're trying to like remix major artists, I think like this might be incorrect, but I think the best bet is to do it as a bootleg first. Ask for forgiveness, not permission, in this regard. Like this is like the one example where that's like correct. I think like if you find a cutty acapella, like a really like a shitty MP3 acapella of something online, and you want to remix it, fucking do it. Like there's what are they gonna do? Like take it down? Like that's the worst that's gonna happen. Like they're gonna ask for you to take it down. And if they like it, they'll be like, hey, how about you take the real acapella and the real stems and make it even better. And a lot of happy accidents happen that way. Like when we did our Rhythm of the Night remix, like in 2015, Spinnin' Records reached out and they said, hey, we really like this. We're going to try to make it official. They couldn't end up clearing the sample from Corona, so it ended up not working out. But that was an example of when we did a unofficial bootleg remix and it ended up working out favorably for us. Same with the Lana Del Ray Summertime Sadness remix. Like we just had an MP3 of the acapella sitting around and we made the remix, and that got the attention of Lana Del Rey's management. And rather than try to like strike us down with the fury of major labels, they just reached out and were like, hey, how about you guys do an official remix for one of her songs from her album, which I feel like is really, really cool of them to do that.
That is cool. That's super cool. So let's
I answer your question? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you said go for the bootleg. So
yeah.
Don't be scared to go for the bootleg.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you in your studio right now?
Yeah, I'm in my studio, aka my bedroom.
Okay.
Which is where I made like 90% of my stuff. I have my 2 guitars next to me. One of them is like I borrowed from my friend because I gave him when I graduated college, I gave my friend one of my guitars, and didn't realize that I would probably want to use it like in a couple of years. So like last year I was like, hey, do you still have that guitar that I gave you? He was like, yeah, but I actually kind of took it apart for parts. So like my friend took this guitar that I gave him and like took it apart and has been like playing with it. So he like gave me one of his guitars in return. And I have another guitar that's like the one that I use. Here, let me pull it up. I don't know if you can see it, but it's this thing. This is the one that I like write or like start most of my songs on. It's a Gretsch G5420. I like it because it's it's a hollow body, so like I don't have to plug it in to hear it loudly, and it's also electric, so it has a lot of tonal possibilities to explore. Um, I used to use a lot of hardware. I used to use a lot of my Prophet Rev 2 as well, like my Dave Smith Prophet, but I ended up selling it to another friend of mine like a couple of months after the EP was finished. Um, but yeah, this is like where I do 99% of the music making.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What are some of your go-to like out of the box, in the box tools that you use in your room, besides like guitar, like besides like instruments?
Mm-hmm. So I for like hardware gear, I got this mic. It's called a Voclia doubler, and it's by this company called Voclia in the UK, and it's a mic that transcribes your like audio input to MIDI. So like you can assign. You probably got Instagram. I got Instagram ads for it for like weeks, and then I was like, "Fuck it, I'll buy it. Fine, okay, I give in, I'll buy it." And I bought it. I've used it maybe like 4 times, but it's really cool. It's like it comes with its own software that like it's like a little circle with like the MIDI notes around it, and you can assign, like you can record a sound each for each MIDI note, and then you go into your DAW or whatever, and you can record yourself. Like let's say you wanted to do drums, like you wanted to beatbox your drums, because I feel like for a lot of people it's like a natural way to get out like a drum groove, and you can do that with this mic. So you can like you have to record like the same sound like 5 times just so it has all the sounds, you know, in slightly varied pitches. So if you record it slightly differently, it'll still record those sounds. So you can like beatbox your drums into it, and it'll like MIDI roll them out perfectly on Ableton.
That's pretty cool.
And it has like you can also record like melody, and it has like a key lock in it, so you can like assign what key you want to it and sing stuff in, and it'll, you know, MIDI roll that out as well if you want. So that's been a lot of fun to use. And in the box, I think in the box is like 99% of what I do. So Modo bass for my K is really cool. It's a lot of fun to use, and you know, in a time when like bass guitars are like really nice bass guitars are really expensive, and you know, most people may not have access to them. I personally don't have access to a really nice bass guitar, so using VSTs for that purpose is really, really beneficial. Like the Contact Rickenbacker bass, I use that a bunch, and I go back and forth between that and Modo bass for my K. And the Modo bass is really cool because like it allows you to mess with the electronics of the basses. So like you can change the pickups, you can change the string gauge.
You can even change like how old the strings are, like how they sound.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah.
Has Modo bass made its way onto any of your final demos, your final productions?
On the EP, yeah, in Rush, in the song Rush, in the bridge section where there's like a breakdown where there's like a live bass part. It's almost like a disco funk bass line thing going on. For that part, we use Modo bass. I forget which preset we use. I think we use the violin bass preset, which is really cool because I love Tame Impala. So like I was like, gotta make it sound like that. Cool. Yeah, so I use the Modo bass a bunch. The T-Rax clipper is a lot of fun too because like, you know, a lot of times when you're making raw ideas in a DAW, it's like they sound very digital or like sterile. You know, so like I think the clipper is a really nice way to get a little crunch and a little warmth into the sound.
So you would put the clipper on like the master of a demo just to kind of like bring it a little bit closer to what it would sound
just to give it some like punch and some oomph. Like let's say if I'm like working with a singer-songwriter or like a singer that I'm trying to write with, and I just have like a thing that I've made on my laptop in a couple of hours, I'll just throw the clipper on it and throw a limiter on it afterwards if I need to, and that's enough to write a song to. It's like loud enough to write a song to, and loud enough for the singer to catch a vibe to. Because I feel like when a singer is trying to record to a song, it's like they have to feel it. Like it's a vibe, it's a feeling, right? So like if they don't like what they're hearing in the beat, like they're not gonna want to make something cool. They're not
Do the
gonna
best
want to
performance.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, the Clipper has been a lot of fun.
Very cool. That's a lot of electronic producers like really like the Clipper.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Yeah, I can tell why. It's really cool. I like it a lot. I think the plugin I use the most on the whole project is this plugin called True Iron by Kazrog. It's
I've never heard of that before.
It's so sick. It's like it's a transformer emulator. So you know, like on a mixing amp or like a summing amp, there's like a power block. The transformer is like the reason people use it. Like the whole point of a summing amp is like for everything to get summed, put together through the power block, the transformer. And True Iron has like a bunch of different transformer emulations. So like you can analogify your sound a little bit. So like what I would do is like crank the gain as far as I can take it until it starts crunching, and then I take it down a little bit. And then like it takes a mono sound and thickens it so it's like slightly stereo. And if you do that to enough sounds, then like everything kind of becomes thicker and wider and like bigger. So I did that for a lot of the guitars, a lot of the bass sounds, a lot of the drum sounds. I feel like on every bus, on every like group in Ableton, the first thing is True Iron. And then on the master, the first thing is True Iron. At the end, it's like the limiter or whatever.
Huh. Okay. Well, we'll all have to look into it if you haven't heard of it before.
Yeah, I know we're on IK's stream, and I'm not trying to like.
No. I mean, all musicians, even me, who I work for IK, we use everything.
Mm-hmm.
We make great products, so does everybody else. So it's just what you're looking for.
That's a great way to think.
But we make the best. No, I'm just kidding. But okay, I just have one more question, and then we'll do a giveaway of T-Rax 5, which actually includes the Clipper that we were just talking about, which is pretty cool. What advice would you give to an artist that is looking to organically grow from start to finish without playlisting, without all of that nonsense? Like, what would you say are some key tips to organically grow?
Talk to your fans. Talk to your listeners. Like, you may only have 5 or 10 of them at first, or like 100 of them at first, but the more you talk to them, the more you engage with them, the more they'll feel like they're personally invested in you. And, when you think about it, like, if you want to make music as a career, as a business, like, you have to think about it as customer relations almost. And, being in touch with your fans is really important. And, I go back and forth between being good at it and being bad at it. Like, I have a Discord server where, my fans can come and hang out and we can chat about pretty much anything, like fucking video games or whatever bullshit is going on. And, just showing your fans and your listeners that you're a normal person like everyone else, and like kind of breaking the barrier down is a really, really important thing. I think that, especially for a lot of people under the age of 18, under the age of 16, maybe, like, they have this idea of artists that are like, especially people who have a lot of streams, a lot of, a lot of gravitas socially, they tend to think of these artists as outside of the scope of human emotion almost. Like, people will say anything to these people just to get their attention. People will like drag them. People will talk about their families. People will send them death threats and stuff like that. So it's like, you have to understand, like, listeners have to understand at the end of the day that the artist is like a normal person who does this for a living. Like, the music is their job. It's not them as a person. So it's like, understanding that there's a real person, a human person behind that, goes a long way in fostering sort of like a close-knit fan base and like a rabid, like cult-like fan base almost.
Okay, that's good advice. Okay,
Right.
so let's do the giveaway now. We're gonna let Asim pick the question. So it can be really anything, but
Okay, if I have a hard question and an easier question. I can ask
wait,
a really hard question.
um, let's go with the easier one. And
Okay.
just to be safe, and throw your answers in the chat as well as with your IK username. So when we pick someone, we will put the software in your account. Let's go.
Okay. Name the best Pink Floyd album.
Oh, well, that's
And
subjective.
exactly. All right. No. So on some trivia. Okay. So okay. So this is not an easy question, but I think it's a good question. I think people will find the answer to this. Alan Parsons Project. What was Alan Parsons, the guy himself, right? What was his first career break? Like, what made him like break into the mainstream of like audio engineering? Because he was an audio engineer at first. Like, he became famous for putting together a group of session musicians to make the Alan Parsons Project. And like, Alan Parsons Project is not really, he's not singing, he's not like really doing much besides engineering and producing, which is what he's the best at. So if you can find me out the project that Alan Parsons worked on that made him like, that established him, there you go.
All right, answers in the chat. Also, did you know we have Alan Parsons packs on our software called Sample Tank? We actually did some work.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm gonna download it. I'm gonna download it as soon as we get off this call.
I got you.
Sick.
So yeah, answers in the chat, and we will pick. I'll pick someone in the chat.
Cool.
So, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and to talk with everybody today. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, week, quarantine, all that good stuff. Yeah, I'll link you all of your information and your EP so everybody can check it out and hear what you've been doing. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.